No one should have to choose between dignity and basic needs. What began as one woman's determination to make period products accessible has grown into a movement that's changed policy, shifted attitudes, and reached hundreds of thousands of people who needed help. Today, I'm speaking with Rochelle Courtenay, the founder and driving force behind Share the Dignity, a national charity working to end period poverty across Australia. And Rochelle doesn't just talk about dignity, she fights for it. And today, she's here to share how one person's clarity of purpose can create real systemic change. Rochelle, welcome. I'm stoked to have you here today and really excited to dig into your story and learn some of your wisdom. So welcome.
Thank you. What an introduction. Even I like me after that introduction.
Very cool. I think you're a seriously cool chick. So I want to dive straight in. What did you see that you couldn't unsee that made you create Share the Dignity? What was it that just went, I have to do this?
Yeah, I don't think it was I have to do this. I think it's I can't not do this. Right? It wasn't like I set out to do something in particular. I just set out to go, there isn't a woman in Australia who wouldn't give a pad or a tampon to somebody in the bathroom that they've never met. Yet nobody talks about periods. How is this even happening? And if I flip back, when I read that article that a friend had sent me, that talked about the fact that women didn't have access to period products, I was so shamed that I'd never thought that this was a problem for anyone. And to be honest, it was a checkmate your privilege moment, right? Now, I grew up in housing commission. I didn't grow up wealthy. My parents both worked two jobs. We did letterbox drops. We did ironing. We did everything to be able to live what I thought was just a normal life, right? We didn't own a home. We didn't have, but my God, I was so privileged. I never went without basic of things. I always had a bed to sleep in. Sometimes our electricity got cut off because my parents didn't have the money to pay it. But I didn't know that as a small child. I just thought it was candle night, right? So, but it was a real checkmate of my privilege, knowing that I had suffered severely with endometriosis. Now, I never not had access to period products. Could I never not throw away a pair of undies because I'd stained them and not have another pair there, or a washing machine or a shower to clean myself up in, let alone chocolate and a water bowl and access to Nurofen. I just thought that's something everybody had, but it wasn't. And when I then Google searched what it was, and period poverty wasn't even a word. It was a word. They were two words that we joined together after Share the Dignity, right? There was not very much written about it. There wasn't anyone doing anything about it. And it was really at that point that, where is the dignity in that? Like, how do we let that happen in Australia, in the lucky country? And, we've talked about it before. I could imagine that would happen in India or Ethiopia or any of those countries that we saw on the TV living in extreme conditions. We didn't see that in Australia. So how does this even happen? And, it happens because periods were something that nobody talked about.
Yeah, I wasn't told. When I was 12, I woke up one morning, I honestly thought I'd shit myself because I had winter pajamas on and the blood had dried. I had no concept that I was going to get a period.
Yeah, me too. And, I didn't tell my mum for 3 months.
Wow.
And I just threw out undies. I hid them in the bin like it was a dirty, dirty secret.
Yeah.
I hope that's very different 11 years on now, that there is not the shame and stigma that is around periods, and it's twofold. It's because of the work that we've done, but it's also that social media, while a lot of people want to talk about the bad bits about it, there are lots of good bits. Like mental health is discussed so much more prevalently. Period products and period shame doesn't now sit in domestic violence. Like, we're all able to learn at our fingertips without there being a privilege of access to education, right?
Yeah, totally. And that's, it's one of the great things that's come from social media. I love it. So the dignity that the women are experiencing, a woman or girl, What do you think actually changes for them when you're able, because it goes way beyond the here's pads, tampons, and essentials. How do you feel that lands for them when that dignity is
Well,
restored?
yeah, I think when someone doesn't have access to period products, that one, they feel dirty and less valued, and it changes the trajectory of their life. So even one day can change the trajectory of your life, right? You don't go to school. You isolate yourself because, when you talk to people that don't have access, they don't go around other people. They wear dark bottoms. They don't participate in sport. They don't go to work. And, people think that this is only happening to people that don't look like you and I. That is not the case.
Mm. I
It's
remember bleeding on a school chair, grade 8, just mortified. I
Yeah.
couldn't run out of the classroom quick enough. Didn't even clean
Yeah.
up. It was horrid.
And that's the thing, it's happening to all of us. How
Yeah.
do we make sure that, one, there is access to period products in school? So if you,
Mm.
and I don't know the situation behind that, but I know that as a 55-year-old woman, I've had 742 accidents in my life, of period accidents, right? So blessed that I could soak my clothes or wash my clothes or throw them out if I needed to, right? That's a place of privilege.
Mm.
But how many, there's wouldn't be a woman you or I know that haven't had an accident. And
100%.
yeah, and
100%.
so how do we as a society work better to make sure that there is access to period products in every bathroom?
Yeah.
Because that just shouldn't be something we're worrying
And for
about.
free.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Without having to exchange your data for
Oh,
anything, which is what's happening now. People have coined onto, oh, there's money to be made in access to period products.
mm.
There always has been, right? Let's not
Yeah.
check
Oh
that. But
gosh. Yeah, it's huge.
some of the things that we've put into place, like free vending machines and free access to period products, there are now other companies who are coming in on board and going, oh, that's really cool. I'll sell the advertising for that, but I'll give them for free, but I'll capture all their data, and then that gets
I
shared.
know. It's
Just give them for free.
Yes, I agree. I agree. No strings attached, literally.
Yeah, literally.
So what are some of the ways do you think that, a woman's dignity is routinely being stripped from us? Even here in Australia, an incredibly privileged country.
Yeah, look,
What other ways do you think they're stripping it from us?
how long is this podcast? Because it
Yeah, I
goes for,
know.
if I'm talking about the lane that I swim in, it's
Yeah, go
about
on. Let's get it.
how do we make sure that there is access to period products no matter where you are. And I will tell you that we do our collections in March and August. We work with around 4,000 charities in Australia. So we don't give them out to women who need them, find them willy-nilly. We work with the charities that are already giving the wraparound services to every woman fleeing domestic violence or homelessness services. It's extreme poverty. Like, there's a lot in that lane, right? There's more than 3 million women in Australia who actually can't afford period products. So it's a really big task for the little charity that went, you know what, this is not okay. It's how do we look at access to period products? How do we educate? How do we then remove the shame and stigma? Now, we can't remove the shame and stigma unless we educate, right? Educate boys, girls, men, and women. Because why did your mum never speak to you about getting a period? Because she was never educated about it, right? But then that lack of education leads to a shame, and it's a secretive thing. That's not the case. If we remove that shame and stigma, we can move towards a world where getting your period should be celebrated. Understanding, I was 50 years old before I realized that there were 4 cycles in a period, and that there were special times of the month where my brain would be wired differently to others. Why on earth is that not used as a superpower? Because we just didn't know, right? That piece of education is so important. It's vitally important for a woman to know who gets a period, but it's also really important for men who are husbands, fathers, bosses, friends, brothers, all of those. This is about how do we all work in, when's the right time to have that conversation with her about that? That's probably not the right week, right? Just having that understanding, it's basic anatomy.
Yeah, agreed.
Sorry, I get so passionate about
No,
that
no,
because
no.
I'm so fired up as to why we never knew that.
I'm a zillion% with you. And I've been a naturopath for nearly 40 years. And I remember saying into my mum's face one day, period, period, period. Mum, it's a fucking period. It's okay. And it's kind of like, now very postmenopausal, it's just like, it's all good. However, I went through the stage when I started to learn this stuff and would use the reusables and put the blood on my plants. And I reframed it all from having the horrors as a teenager, not knowing a thing, to really educating myself and then working with clients for decades, because it is the coolest thing that we actually do, because it allows us to give birth.
Absolutely. And who would we be without our children and their love? And like it's such a privilege to get your period, and it's such a privilege to be able to have a baby. If you talk to people who really struggle with getting a period every month, like that to them is just horrible. I remember I tried to fall pregnant for 5 years. Every period was a freaking nightmare because it meant that I wasn't going to be a mum.
Yeah, it's huge. So much emotion.
And I think, if I think back, periods were such a big part of my life because of the endometriosis, because of the not being able to fall pregnant. Would Share the Dignity probably even exist if I didn't suffer so badly with periods? Probably not. So for me, I look back at them now and say they were an absolute gift, because they allowed me to do this and make such a difference and I feel like I am the wealthiest person in the world because of what I've been able to give back, but the people that I've met, the things that I get to do. It's a pretty cool world.
Yeah, it's seriously cool. I love that you've taken a stand for this. So you said that the Dignity Drive rolls around March and August every year. Yep. What do you think the regular person, male and female, understood better about shelters and homelessness and DV and just everything that is beyond them dropping a backpack or a bag of necessities into your donation bins?
I think if you could just take a look at our Another Bloody podcast, the women just look like you and I. They just look like us. And for the blokes, they're not somebody who's got no teeth in a terry toweling dress that's been affected by domestic violence, which is the vision that we all grew up with, right? It wasn't somebody you knew. It's somebody that you're passing in the street, somebody that you work with. She is 1 in 4 that has been affected by domestic and family violence. And it is, unfortunately, domestic and family violence is why there is such great homelessness. It's all interweaved, and even that childhood trauma and all of those sorts of things, they're all connected. And we have the ability in Australia to fix that.
Yeah,
anyway, I'm going to swim in the lane that I swim in, which is share the dignity.
This is your
I wish we could fix everything.
Yeah, well, this is your soapbox. Please use it. Yeah. So let's take a moment, brag on your podcast.
Another Bloody podcast is really about listening to the voices of the women and girls and those who menstruate, because to be honest, on our podcast you can hear from Oscar, a transgender who was born female, who is now male. Now periods to him is very different, and I just wanted people to understand that when people say, oh, it's only for those that menstruate, well, yes it is, but I don't menstruate anymore. Right? But for Oscar, he did until he had his hysterectomy, right? But you have to understand when people go, oh, well, it's excluding me as a woman. Well, no, you know what? Take a look at Oscar. Oscar's a person. Oscar is somebody's baby, somebody's loved one. How do you say that this is not about him when he was born a female and is now turning up as a male? Who cares what he turns up with or as, right? It's his life to lead. Who do we need to get on our social media soapbox and tear them down? So anyway, that's not what the podcast is about, but Oscar is one story about just acceptance and understanding a story behind why somebody might receive products or who we help, or the whole gamut of that. So take a listen. They're 28 minutes, like a good cycle. They land on the 28th of every month, but Another Bloody podcast. Take a listen.
Well, wherever you're listening to this from, I'll put the link below direct to the podcast so you guys can track it down. Okay, so this work kind of asks women to lead with empathy and stamina for you to build what you've created and step into that philanthropic world. I am certain you've had to grow as a woman, not just as a founder. and it would be in areas probably that you didn't even realize was going to happen. How's that experience been?
Yeah, like I said, I feel like I'm the wealthiest person in the world.
Mm.
Although in saying that, my bank account shows me that I'm a millionaire, but I am the wealthiest person in the world, right? Because of the experiences, the growth that I've had, the people that I've met. You know, before Share the Dignity, I had my own personal training business. So I asked all my clients, all females, they were all aged between, oh God, I had Emily who was like 25 and Robin who was in her 60s and somebody else who was actually close to 70. So I trained females all day, every day. So I was a netball coach. I just making people's lives better through better health choices was always right up in my gamut, right? But I asked them all to bring me a packet of pads or tampons for every wine they had in the month of February 2015. And some ladies would just bring me a packet, or some ladies would bring me a whole bag, and I'd like not ask any questions. I'm like, but some of them, like me, were blown away that they had never thought of that. So I remember Robin worked at the police department, and she was like, I just put a note on my desk and asked everyone to bring them in. And she's like, some men would just like take a big long circle around my desk because no one had ever talked about it. And now how proud I am to see collection boxes in gyms, in ATO offices in Canberra with men holding them, with the Broncos coming in here.
Bunnings.
And at Bunnings, a male-dominated industry, right?
Yeah.
Well, really? I don't know how. I reckon there's just as many females going into Bunnings as there is.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, look, I think the growth in me as a person has been exponential. It has from a leadership perspective, and I think my leadership is more, you know, I played netball for 40 years of my life. I played my first game at 80 and I did my last knee injury at 48. So I loved it, but I coached it, I played it, everything I did was about netball. And, you know, I did something yesterday where somebody was interviewing me and I said, I'm just part of the team. I just happen to be a goal shooter sometimes, and sometimes I'm playing goal defense. But without Ali, my center, none of this would happen. And whether people come in and join the team as a sub for a season or they're there for a long time, everybody plays a role in this winning team. And I'm just really grateful to be part of it.
Have you ever had moments where you thought this is so big and gone to, like, whether you've gone to a burnout point, or have you ever just thought, fuck, it's too big?
Oh, no, I don't think I've never thought it's too big. I just think I sometimes run out of puff, which is understandable. For the first 5 years, we were all volunteer run. Literally, I had two jobs. I worked this full time, unpaid, and I did my training. So I literally, I'd get up at 5. My first client was at 5:30. It was full burnout. I don't even know how I did it. I lived on 4 hours sleep. I lived on Diet Coke as my fuel of choice, but I lived on adrenaline. It was so flippin' exciting, and it was addictive. And I have a very addictive personality, right? Like you give me a dog a bone and give me a problem to fix, I'll fix it, right? Yeah. So I'm not, you know, I crashed and burned in 2020 when I had 3 operations in a very short amount of time. And I think that was my body's way of saying, you're going to have to stop or something's going to really give. And I think I can't even remember what the first operation. I did my knee. I did my knee and had to have a surgery. Then I had a really, really low iron, and they found I had a bleeding esophagus, which was causing an ulcer. And then I had to have a hysterectomy 6 weeks after that. So for me that year, and it was COVID. So it was an absolute blessing because it was a complete 360. I then decided that my health had to come before anything else, including I'm a giver. So I was giving everything to the charities, giving everything to my kids, my family, my everybody, right? So, and my cup was empty. Not that I ever thought it was empty, because I just kept going, and I just, you know, but there were times where I remember having to get to Tasmania, speak at something, and then get there, and then the next morning it was 4 o'clock and I had to get back on an early morning flight to get back to something else. That's just how it was. And I remember Tamara, our Queensland team leader, sending me this picture, and I can share it with you, of these two two women in a remote Indigenous community holding a bag like it was the most important thing they'd ever got, with these dark women with all these teeth in this smile. It was the most blessed thing I've ever seen. And it was the kick up the ass that I needed. That just was like, just get up, put your lippy on, get dressed, and stop whinging.
Yeah. Send me that picture. I'm going to slot it in. If you're watching this on YouTube, I've already slotted it in. Here it is. Look.
And
here it is. Look.
And so for me, serendipitously, every time I feel like I'm about to run out, I always get a story or a picture. It just happens to me all the time. But in saying that, post hysterectomy, and then I ended up having to have a pacemaker, my health is my highest priority. Without me being well, I can't do anything. I can't be there for anyone.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'm sorry that you got those little knocks from the universe. However, I'm really happy that you did, that you've taken notice of it. Yeah. So a lot of women think, philanthropy, doing what you do, it's wealthy, well-connected kind of people, where I know that micro philanthropy is everything. What does Share the Dignity prove about the power of everyday women and people acting consistently?
I think, and I always say this, I would rather have $5 from 5 million people than have one great big amount, because I don't believe that every single one of those people that give $5 then cares and knows about it, right? And then will continue to make a difference. Share the Dignity is a way of giving kindness and not needing to be boasty about it, right? I mean, not that I'm taking away from somebody who wants to give us $5 million, but I'm just saying I'd rather take $5 from 5 million people.
Agree.
Because we can all make a difference. And $5 to me, when I was a solo parent, when I needed to buy bread, sometimes I've counted 5-cent pieces to be able to buy bread. Me giving $5 was a lot of bloody money. And so I really respect when people give me $5 or they give me $50 or $500. It's equally as important to that person, no matter the amount that they give.
Yeah. Jane Goodall said it really well. She talked about how there's life is just this big jigsaw, and we all have to do our piece. The jigsaw doesn't get complete with just one $5 million donation. It's all those pieces, all of us taking a stand and saying this has to change, that completes the jigsaw and brings change like you're showing can happen, but still needs someone to lead it. Thank you for that. So by the time this comes out, you're 55 and I'll be 65. So as we age, something shifts. I know I've felt it deeply in me. It's part of why I run this podcast. There's kind of more certainty, more what impact, what am I doing, what's next, how does giving look, all that kind of thing. What have you felt because you started this before you hit this time of your life, what have you felt in changes as you've been aging wisely?
Yeah, I think I started the charity when I was 44, best year of my life. Just completely changed the trajectory of my life, right? Starting the charity. It was never about me. To this day, it's still not about me.
Yeah.
It's about how do we make sure that we all stand up for that woman who just doesn't have access to the basic of essentials. So, look, I think at about 50, I could feel that I was starting to change. Nothing was about what I look like on the outside or judging. I have always grown up hating people that judge people, right? But now I understand they're judging because they're not whole. That is something about them, right? Yeah. So I was really judging people who were being judgmental. I was still judging them. So really, I don't know. I wish that I could have been this person at 20 or 30 or 40. Don't you wish that?
So much. God. And I get the logic that we're not meant to. We're meant to have all these life experiences to grow into the wise woman we are today. But holy shit, we could have had such a different impact on the world.
Oh my God, I would have run this country.
Yeah. So differently. Yes, we would have.
Absolutely. And how great would the world be? How great of a parent I would have been. If I could have my time again, I wish I could parent again in a calm,
Yeah.
dignified way, where back then, literally, you're just running at 1,000,000 miles an hour and you're trying to prove everything to everybody except for yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But we've had to experience that to learn how to be that calm in the chaos now
Yeah.
at this time in our lives. It's such a
And
journey being a human.
and being a grandparent, like, oh my God, it is the best thing that has ever happened to me in my whole life.
Mm.
It's love on steroids.
Yeah, it's a seriously cool connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the dignity drive started with a simple kind of radical question, like what if we treated women in crisis with dignity, not charity? How did that question change you as well? Not, I've kind of asked it, but I haven't asked it. If you really think of just the dignity drive, like really doing this great big focus to like, let's have a big impact in this amount of time, and how it grew into being, for DV women and all that, what other changes has running that brought to you?
Look, I think for me, it's weird because it kind of was about how do we, I just thought we could fix the problem with the amount of women who live in Australia. There are 12 million women who live in Australia, right? How do we get every single one of them to donate a packet of pads or tampons to give to the, at the beginning, I heard it was 48,000 women who were experiencing homelessness, which is a load of bull ass because there are so many more people that are affected by
Yeah.
period poverty. So it's literally 1 in 5, which means that statistically it's at least 3 million people right now.
Are in period poverty in Australia.
Yeah, which means that they are using wadded up toilet paper, newspaper, chucks, cutting a pad in half, leaving a tampon in for 8 hours because they've got one pack and they need it to last for the longevity of it. I've heard of farmers using like literally rags, like,
Yeah.
and people say, oh yeah, but I used to use them when that's how I grew up. But this is not what we want. I don't want the same for my children. Surely people don't want that. I don't want my granddaughter ever having to sit in school and bleed on the back of a dress because she's too embarrassed to say my mum can't afford period products.
Yeah.
It's about how do we make life better for those that come after us? Because for me, I'm finished my period, right?
Yeah.
Not about me. It's about how do we make it different and make better health outcomes. And then the advocacy, while we want people to donate in March and August, it's also about the advocacy. How do we make sure that every education department in Australia takes this seriously and understands that this not having access to the period products can change the educational outcomes for girls and in all postcodes of Australia. So we've been able to advocate for every state and territory to now provide period products free of charge in every bathroom, except for Northern Territory and Tasmania. The two states that have the worst poverty in Australia do not have unlimited access to period products for their students. Now, Northern Territory and Tasmania have both come out with headlines saying we're going to provide period products. But if you dig down to their announcement, it was $3.67 per student per year. So you're okay if you get your period once in the whole year. Where's the meat in the sandwich, right? Show me how you're going to be different. How can it be a postcode lottery as to whether you can have dignified access to period products? It's not okay. So we will keep fighting that fight. Our campaigns this year are about bloody good sport. So how do we make sure that every sports club, no matter where you're playing, has access to period products in their training bag, that there is a sanitary bin in the council toilets or the toilets where they're training and playing. Now, these are basic human rights, yet there are not sanitary bins. And we're hearing about girls participating in sport and having to put their freaking pads and tampons in a lunchbox to take back home with them because they don't have bins. Like, is that not okay?
Yeah, it's really not okay. And my mind just went for a second when you talked about the sanitary bins. I know where, I go to the beach. Not all the public toilets have a.
Why?
I know.
Because they're council toilets, and I bet you they're run by councillors who are men. So this is what we also have another program called Council Cares, because it's not any of this can be done in silo. So, and the reason I knew about the sport and the councils owning the toilets and stuff is that we've now gone to every sporting code in Australia and said, we now know better. We do a survey called the Bloody Big Survey. Now, we know that 68% of girls are not participating in sport when they have their period for multiple reasons, but the main reason is a fear of leaking.
Yeah.
Now, how can we look at that and take that number from 68% down to 30%? Provide period products in your training bag. Make sure that they're in the bathrooms. Make sure that you've got a sanitary bin wherever they're training or playing, right? And then I remember speaking to Soccer Australia, and they're saying, well, this is great. This is what we want. But they're council toilets, and we've spoken to the council and they're not providing them. And so we came out with a program called Council Cares, where we do a bloody big survey. So the survey comes out every 3 years. The survey came out in 2024. We had 153,000 responses. Wow. It's the biggest body of data the world's ever seen on menstruation and probably women's health, to be honest. And it gave us some really alarming statistics. One, that 1 in 5, 25% of women cannot afford, 22% of women cannot afford period products. And in the last 12 months, that was 21%. That 78% of girls at university.
Just to drop that 5%, you gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, it's crazy. And crazy that this has never been measured anywhere in the world like this. So this data has allowed us to advocate for change. It's, I had a meeting with the Federal Minister for Health, and they're saying, I wish every charity came to us with this great big data set. I'm like, yeah, well, who's funding it?
What are you going to do with it?
I bet it's not you. We funded it, right? But it came from a pain point, and a point where we were trying to work with a university who we paid money for to do this body of research to say, tell me that the vending machines that we're funding to put in schools are changing the trajectory of the lives for the girls in schools. 3 years down the track, we still didn't have the data that we wanted because of ethics, because of research and ethics and asking children. We couldn't get the answers that we needed. So I was like, well, blow it. I'm just going to ask on our page. And it was a kind of a secondary thing. And then the first survey had 124,000 responses, and the stats were alarming, sad, much worse than I thought they were. And then when we did the survey in 2024, the stats were even worse. And I was like, how is this happening? How are we not getting better? So literally I went, right, every single question is going to turn into an advocacy piece, because by the time I do the survey in 2027, which is next year, I want every sporting code providing period products. I want every school, everywhere you get an education. So it should be in primary, secondary, TAFEs, universities, trade. So if you're doing an apprenticeship, where are you getting period products? These girls, there is not enough of those girls in trades, and yet you're not giving them what they need to be the best version of themselves. Yet you're providing tea and coffee, and on mining sites you've got pool tables and ping pong, and you've got beers for $2, but you get 20 bucks for a packet of period products on a mining site. Come on. Anyway, there goes me off on my little soapbox.
No,
again.
I like the soapbox.
But the data speaks
so
to
important.
us.
I love that you've got that body of data. That is crazy cool. Sadly, that's what the governments of that are going to listen to. But you're right. Who's going to fund this stuff?
Yeah, well, you know what? With that amount of people having a lack of access to period products, this can't be on the little charity that could. This has to be government change, and change where we're all part of it. So we can still do what we're doing, but councils. So our Council Cares program is about each council in Australia being given the data because we ask for people's postcodes. So every council, all 575 of them, have got a letter from us that says this is what the state of inequality looks like in your council. This is the Australian average. And when we do our survey in 2027, you would hope that that is better, because we will come back and we'll be telling everybody.
Yeah,
right?
shame.
But what we've asked for councils is access to period products in one of your public libraries. We've asked for rebates on reusable products, because every council has a garbage problem, right? Has a recycling problem. So why not offer that to try to reduce the landfill in the first place, but also encourage people? Because once you've got a menstrual cup or a period undies, you then don't have to buy them. You won't have period poverty, right? So it's kind of a fix for you. It's a fix for them. It's a fix for us. We won't then need to get more donations. We've also asked that they helped educate their constituents we last year had an animation, a 2-minute non-verbal animation that can be viewed by everybody to understand menstruation. Now, that's never been around. That's now been shown in Africa and everywhere around the country. To understand it, understandably, 70,000 of those downloads on YouTube are from men because they want to understand more.
Wow, I am going to put a link to that below wherever you're listening to this. I will make sure that link is in the show notes so you can go and watch it and share it around as well, everybody. Cool.
All right. That is the most powerful thing anyone can do post
Yeah.
listening to this is share it. Share it publicly, because then we remove the shame and stigma. 2, we make sure that everybody knows about Share the Dignity, because we're all part of the solution.
Yeah. I was actually just going to ask you if every woman listening believed that she was allowed to give time, voice, presence to share stuff, not just money. It's not just about money. What do you think is possible? What's the cultural shift that we could see in the next decade?
I think if people just shared their views on periods, shared their view. Look, I had a hysterectomy and I didn't know I was going to go into menopause, instant menopause. I'm the pad lady, for crying out loud. Was I not educated on that? Why did I sit across from a doctor having to go back to him and ask for HRT? Why would that not just, like, doctors need to be better educated. Everybody needs education. Will change the world for everybody.
Agree. What have we not spoken about yet today, Rochelle? Because I want to respect your time, that we need to. What is in your heart that you want to talk about?
Yeah, if I could talk about one other thing, it's in the bag. It's like my favorite child of Share the Dignity. So like I said, we do our collections in March and August, where we ask people to give pads, tampons, menstrual cups, period undies, discs, incontinence products, and we then give them out to every charity that we work with in Australia. Now, remember that these products don't come back to a central location, and we could never have enough volunteers. So please, if you're listening and you want to volunteer, we need you 3 times a year. Those products, if they're donated in Broome or Bendigo or Ballarat, they stay in that local area and they go to those domestic violence shelters and homelessness service in your hood. So you're actually helping the women in your community. And then we do It's in the Bag. So it's where we ask of you to fill a handbag you no longer use, or buy a new one if you need to. Fill it with life's essentials, things like shampoo, conditioner, toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, soap, then period products. And then whatever else you put into your bag is up to your bag size, your imagination, and your budget. Now, I've owned 7,422,000 hair ties in my life, and I can never find one. So I always put a pack of hair ties, I always put a hairbrush, and I always put chapsticks in my bag when I'm giving a bag. We then get them out to every woman spending Christmas in a domestic violence shelter or experiencing homelessness. We do 3 different types of bags. So we do a women's bag, we do a teen bag. We have more than 25,000 teens in Australia who'll be sleeping rough tonight. Now, sometimes, like everybody, they would not get a Christmas gift. So for a lot of women, when they get their bag, this is the only Christmas gift that they get, but it is also dignity in a bag. And it allows them, and this is the bit that I love, it allows them to feel valued and seen and gifted, right? So when I wake up on Christmas Day, it is the first thing I always think about is, I wish I was a fly on the wall so that I could see how she feels when she gets that bag. Yeah. And it's such an easy thing to do. If you can't afford to do one on your own, ask 70 of your friends to buy one item each. It's just such a beautiful way to make a difference to somebody. I love that. And then you drop them to Bunnings the last 2 weeks of November and we get them out. Isn't that crazy? You've made it so easy for us to be involved. Well, I think that's the beauty of being a time poor mum, right? When everything was done, it was like, oh my God, how do I make that one, as easy as possible to donate, as easy as possible for a corporate to be involved, right? And as easy as possible for a volunteer. Now, we cannot share the dignity without volunteers, because I'm not in Broome, I'm not in Bendigo, I'm not in Ballarat, I'm not in all those places. So those volunteers are the backbone to share the dignity.
Thank you to the volunteers. This has been huge, and it's just the start of a conversation that I encourage everyone who's listening to share this, share it with a girlfriend, share it with everyone, because I would love to see those statistics better next year when you do your survey. We can do it by spreading the word and getting the change to come. So thank you for everything you've done. I'm really curious, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self, Rochelle, what would you say to yourself? What would you whisper in your ear with the wisdom that you've got today?
Don't give a fuck about what anybody else thinks of you.
Boom.
You know,
I agree.
I could take the fuck out of there if you like.
Fuck no. I like the fucks. This is what it's about. This podcast is about being real.
Yeah.
It's real. It deserves that energy.
I just think, you know, I grew up in a house, and, you know, it wasn't safe for me in my house, and I was always put down by other people. So I didn't have a word. I didn't know I was worthy to even breathe or speak, right? So I wish that I could be that 18-year-old, because my God, my path would have been very different. And do you know what? I look at Share the Dignity, and it wasn't until I started to feel a little worthy that I started to change the world. Imagine if everybody felt worthy at that age.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a beautiful thing to start that process. So thank you for all that you do. It is a really important mission in life. Your impact is immeasurable. So thank you.